everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be starting my summerween vlog, and I literally could not be more excited about it. If you guys don't know, summerween is a week-long readathon hosted by Gabby Reads, which is basically where you just celebrate Halloween, but in the summer. This is one of my absolute favorite readathons to participate in every year. I've done it for the last two, and then in 2021 I kind of like inadvertently did like a summerween type situation. So I've been really looking forward to being able to film the one for this year. So I'm going to get into talking about my TBR because it is a little bit ridiculous. I did go over it in my summer TBR, but I am going to briefly go through it again in case you guys haven't seen that. But I'm not going to go into like synopses of these books in the intro. I'll tell you more about them later. So there are 5 prompts for the readathon, and I do have books for all of them. So I'm just going to quickly go through the prompts. The first prompt is to read a book in the dark, and for this one I'm going to be reading The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. This is a gothic classic, kind of the first gothic classic, and I really like reading a kind of horror or gothic classic for summerween, so I will be reading this one. It's very short, it's like 100 pages, so I'm thinking this would kind of be the perfect one to read at night. The next prompt is to read a thriller or a horror book. Now I think initially for this one I was going to use How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive by Craig D. Louis, but my hold for that has not come in from the library, and I'm very certain it is not going to throughout the week. And I haven't seen the best reviews of it, so I don't really want to go buy a physical copy, so I have like a couple different options for what I could choose to kind of replace it with. I'm thinking maybe Mina and the Undead. I'm also thinking maybe the Final Girl support group because me and Elaine are buddy reading this book. So I'm just not sure which of those I'm gonna choose, but I think I'll kind of like see what I'm feeling when I get to a point where I want to fulfill that prompt. The next prompt is to read a book with the night sky on the cover, and for this one I'm going to be listening to Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I kind of enjoy Riley Sager's thrillers. I feel like they're kind of hit or miss for me, more so miss than hit. However, because his new releases typically come out in the summer, kind of before Summerween, I know a lot of people do read them for Summerween, and I just think it's really fun to kind of read them with everybody else who's also reading them for Summerween. So I'm going to be listening to this one on audio. I have literally no clue what it's about, but I guess I'll find out. I also do have a spooky puzzle that I'm going to work on while I listen to this, which should be perfect. The next prompt is to read a book with 5 words in the title, and for this one I'm going to be using A Guest in the House by Emily Carroll. This is a graphic novel. Again, I don't know what it's about, but I love Emily Carroll's illustration style, and the other graphic novel that I've read by them I really enjoyed, so I've been meaning to get to this one. And then the last prompt is to read a book that takes place in summer, and this is probably the book that I'm the most excited about, and that is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. I have heard so many good things about this book, and I think it is going to be the perfect pick for Summerween because it involves killer mermaids, and that is certainly a topic that I have never read before in a book, so I'm really looking forward to getting into this one. I think I'm going to start with this one just because I really want to see if I like it or not, and then I do have 2 extra picks because I'm insane and I just want to do all the spooky reading I possibly can this week. So the first one that I have here is another graphic novel, and that is the New Moon graphic novel. Yes, these are graphic novel adaptations of the Twilight books. They're okay. Obviously these aren't the best, but I feel like Twilight, specifically New Moon, is very kind of Summerween coded in my mind. Like I have already listened to the soundtrack a little bit this morning because it's that good. So I'm really excited to read this one. I read part 1 and 2 of the Twilight graphic novels last fall, and it was just a really fun time. So I'm quite excited that I have this one. And then finally I do have a nonfiction pick, and that is Trick or Treat: A History of Halloween by Lisa Morton. This is exactly what it sounds like, and as somebody who loves Halloween but doesn't exactly know a ton about it, I've really been wanting to find some nonfiction about it, so I figured I should maybe try this one. And I'm gonna read a little bit of this week. I don't know if I'm going to 100% finish it, but I'm really looking forward to jumping into this one. There are also like photos and whatnot throughout this as well, so I think that'll be really interesting. There we go. Those are the 7 books that I am hoping to read this week. Obviously it's a little bit insane, but like I have nothing to do for the next 7 days. I've cleared my calendar so I can do as many spooky, fun, Halloween type things in this video as possible, and I cannot wait. I literally have like so many plans this week because I want to read my 7 books. I want to do a Halloween puzzle. I want to work on my crochet project because I have started making a granny square blanket. I have not made any more progress since my last video, but this is how it's looking. I'm thinking I can like do some crocheting while I listen to an audiobook, so that'll be fun. I obviously want to do some baking. I'm gonna watch a spooky kind of summer slasher movie. I know it just keeps going. Me and my friend Mackenzie are gonna watch the Summerween episode of Gravity Falls, which I've never seen before, which seems like a crime. I mean, I've seen some Gravity Falls before, but I didn't know they had a Summerween episode. So we're gonna watch that together and it's gonna be so fun. And I just have so many other things that I want to do as well. So I'm thinking this is probably gonna be a pretty long vlog, so I hope you guys are okay with that. So actually, before I like fully get into the vlog, I'm still not done, just making this intro even longer. I do have book mail that I thought we could open. I've been saving it because these books are kind of spooky and they're also just really pretty and I want to show them to you. So this is from Blackwell's. I'm quite excited about it. Oh, they're so tiny. So I've seen these books around before and I just think they're so cute, and I really like the larger versions that Penguin does of these books, but when I saw that they had like mini cloth bound classics, I knew I wanted to acquire a few just because I love tiny things and they're so cute. So the first one that I have here is The Mask of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe. Just look how pretty this is. It's so tiny too. And I've never read The Mask of the Red Death before. It also does have some other stories in here. I've read, I think 4 of these maybe. But yes, I'm really excited about this one. I've been wanting to read some more Poe and I thought this would kind of be the perfect little addition to have of it. And then the other one that I have here is The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. I absolutely love Shirley Jackson's writing. I've read both The Haunting of Hill House and We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Those are 2 of my favorite kind of like modern classic horror kind of books. They're just so good. And I've been wanting to read The Lottery specifically, like as a short story, for a really long time, but I've never gotten around to it because I've never like had a copy of it to read before. So when I saw that they had like this little small like short story collection of hers and it had The Lottery in it, I was like, you are coming home with me. Well, I don't know why it said it's coming home with me because I ordered this online, but like, you know what I mean. I'm just really excited to have this. I am honestly not too great at reading short story collections, but I decided to like pick up a few and see how I do with them. And they do kind of fit the Summerween vibe perfectly because they are both like horror authors. So yeah. That is, I think, all of the stuff that I wanted to go through in this intro. I know it's been rather long, but we are just going to get into the video ASAP because I don't want to keep you here any longer. I think the first thing that I want to do is to do some decorating, not too much, but like just a little bit, you know. I want to get out some of my Halloween decorations. I'm quite excited. And then I want to get into the Drowning Deep. So we are just going to get into the video. I cannot wait for the spooky week ahead. So it is now kind of mid-afternoon-ish, and I do have an update for you guys in a second on Into the Drowning Deep because I have made some progress with this and I'm very excited to talk about it. But first, I do have a couple more things that I want to show you because I did get some more book mail. And then I also went out earlier and I stopped by Joann's and I ended up picking up a little Halloween decoration because they have been putting out their Halloween stuff, which is very exciting. So I decided that I wanted to pick up a like kitchen towel. and this is the one that I decided to get. Also, all of their Halloween stuff was like 40% off, and I was like, why not, you know? And this one is super cute. But as for the book mail, I definitely made not the best financial decision in buying this. Like, I didn't even know that they had come out with this edition of this book, but it was so pretty, and I haven't even read the book, but I was like, damn it, I want that one so bad. So I'm going to sell my current copy that I have of this book so I can have this one because it's stunning. So there's, you know, a little bit of prerequisite information as to why I bought another copy of this book, even though I already own it. But you know what? This is also very on theme because I think these books are very, like, gothic. I also bought the sequel. We don't have to talk about it, okay? I made a snap decision, and I have no regrets, frankly. But I saw that they re-released the hardbacks for Belladonna, and they, like, changed the color of it from, like, this purpley color to this stunning pink. And I'm a sucker for pink books. Like, I just love them so much. So when I saw somebody talking about this book, I was like, what is this edition? Can I still buy it? I need it. So I bought it. And it also has a little design on the hardcover as well, and like pink foiling, which is so pretty. So I decided I will buy this one, but I need to like sell my other copy of it because I do not need 2 copies of this book. And then while I was there, I decided to go ahead and buy the second one in hardback as well, because I know with like UK hardbacks, they do eventually switch to the paperbacks and you can't get the hardbacks anymore. So I figured, why not buy the sequel too? So I picked up Foxglove. I just love these covers. I think they're absolutely stunning, and like the pink and the purple are so pretty. So I'm 100% going to be reading these books this fall. I'm pretty sure I said I was going to read Belladonna last fall and I did not. But that's on me because I definitely should have done that. And I do have a video already planned for September where I will be reading like spooky romance books. And these are kind of perfect for it. So yeah, that was my irresponsible book purchase of the week. As for an actual reading update, I have indeed started Into the Drowning Deep, and I think I'm going to love this book, honestly. I'm currently on page 79. I just made it up to part 2, and I just am loving so many things about this book so far. As for the setup of this book, I believe this is set a couple of years after this movie studio was going to do like a mockumentary style movie where they sent out an actual research team as well as like camera crew and whatnot to the Mariana Trench, and they were gonna do like a horror mockumentary style movie about killer mermaids basically, but nobody believed they would actually be there. However, after they set out to sail, the crew was never heard from again. The boat was eventually found, but it was empty and like 800 miles off course, and obviously that could be chalked up to a typical boating accident. However, there was a clip that was recorded by the filmmakers that were on the boat that was recovered, and it showed these mermaid-like creatures coming on board and murdering everybody very violently and eating them. That footage has been heavily debated. A lot of people think it's a hoax. However, there are quite a few people who do not think that it's a hoax. So kind of enter the main characters that we're following. The first one being Tori, and Tori has a very personal connection to what happened because her sister was on board, and her sister presumably got eaten by these killer mermaids. So Tori has made it her life mission to become a marine biologist and basically discover what happened to her sister. And then the other main character that we've kind of been introduced to is, I think she's a marine biologist, but specifically she's a sirenologist, which is somebody that studies mermaids, which I think is such a fun concept. I love it when there are like very specific names for the study of very specific things. And her name is Jillian, and so far in the first part of this book, we've kind of just been getting acquainted with them as characters, but towards the very end of part 1, they were approached by the initial company that was going to do that mockumentary, and they were like, hey, we are going to send out another team to the Mariana Trench. Do you guys want to go? And obviously they were like, yes, I want to go. So I would assume the rest of this book is going to follow their voyage to the Mariana Trench, and we are going to see them potentially prove the existence of real killer mermaids. And I just love this book so much so far. I just think it's such an interesting concept, and it's something I've never read about before, so I think that makes it even more interesting. I also love that this book is chocked full with like actual information about sea life and like marine biology related things. Like, I know nothing basically nothing about any of these topics. So even though there's not like super in-depth information, there is like a little bit thrown in there. Like I can tell this is a very well-researched book, and I love that because even though it's fiction, I feel like I'm learning so much. And I also love the overtones of like environmentalism and the human's impact on the sea and sea life and just the planet in general, because it makes so much sense in this book to talk about that. So I think it's just really seamlessly woven in, and I'm just loving it so far. And it is literally like the quintessential summerween book, because obviously there are all the horror elements of people being eviscerated by these killer mermaids, but it like takes place at sea. So like that's the very like summery kind of vibes being brought in there, and it's just so good so far. But so far I'm just loving it, and I'm really excited to report that because I've been in such a reading slump recently. But this book is already so intriguing, and I need to see how this voyage is going to play out. So I'm just really excited about that. And I will definitely be reading a lot of this tonight. That is my goal. Oh, when did that go out? Anyway, it is currently 4 o'clock. I don't exactly know what I'm gonna do for the rest of the night aside from read Into the Drowning Deep. I'm thinking maybe I might do some baking tonight because I really want some brownies and I really want to make some brownies. So I might do that. They're gonna be fun, like spooky brownies, which like you'll see what I mean when I make them. But I think they're gonna be really fun. I've also never made brownies from scratch before, so this is going to be an interesting expedition, shall we say. I always make them from a box mix, and the brownies from the box mix are delicious, but I do feel like it's more satisfying to make things myself sometimes, so that's probably my plan. But I'm gonna get to baking and reading. So it is the next day, and I do indeed have a couple of very exciting updates for you guys. We'll get to the one that I'm the most excited about in a second here, but I did want to give you guys my review of the brownies that I made yesterday, and I honestly think they were such a success. That is, until I tried to cut them. I had this nice little vision in my head of cutting it into 9 little square brownies. They were gonna be so cute. But with the brownies, there's like a layer of chocolate ganache, and then the ghosts are made out of plain white chocolate. So the ghosts were like so much firmer than the ganache that when I tried to like cut them, it just sunk into the ganache, and it kind of ruined it like just a little bit. But I still think they were super cute, and I know in the future now to figure something else out if I want to try doing that. But I've been wanting to make these ghost type brownies for a long time because I always see them floating around Pinterest. So I'm really glad I finally got myself to do it. And they were delicious. Like, even though they were looking a little bit rough by the end, they were scrumptious. I'm a big fan of how they turned out. They kind of taste exactly like cosmic brownies, and I love a cosmic brownie, so it was kind of perfect. But then the other very exciting thing that happened yesterday that we need to talk about is the fact that I hit 90,000 subscribers yesterday, which is absolutely nuts, honestly. And I just wanted to take a moment, obviously, to stop and talk about that and thank you guys so much. I feel like every time I hit a new milestone, I'm just absolutely baffled that that many people wanted to subscribe to my channel. Like, sitting down and visualizing 90,000 people, kind of terrifying. Like, honestly, if I had to actually talk to a group of 90,000 people, or honestly, even if I had to talk to a group of like 9 people, I would be so stressed out. But I am just so incredibly beyond thankful to each and every one of you for subscribing to my channel. Honestly, it kind of baffles me that this is my life sometimes and that I get to do this, and it is literally all thanks to you guys. So just thank you so much. I still can't believe it. It's still absolutely insane. And I know it's not all about the numbers, but I did want to just thank you guys so much because I still can't like wrap my head around it. It's so crazy. But that was very exciting. So I just wanted to say thank you. But moving on to my reading update, of which I have one because I have read a little bit more of Into the Drowning Deep, and I've made it to part 3, I believe, which is on page 171. So I think I'm like a third of the way through the book now, maybe a little bit more, and I'm continuing to really enjoy this one. Part 2 definitely focused on them setting out on their journey. They have finally made it to the Mariana Trench, and we're kind of being introduced to the other people that are on board. There are definitely a couple of people that I absolutely think are gonna die. Specifically, there's this one group of poachers that they brought along, and I understand why they were brought along for this journey, because obviously they are there to figure out if there are killer mermaids that exist in the ocean. And they don't want a repeat of what happened on the Atargatis, I think is how you pronounce like the name of the first ship that went out and like everybody got murdered on. So I understand why the poachers are there with them now, but still they seem like awful people. So if they were to get eviscerated by some mermaids, I don't want to say deserved, but I might say deserved. And then there are also like some other kind of minor side characters that I also think are going to get it eventually. But we are now definitely getting into the horror things that are happening in this book, because a big thing happened at the end of part 2, and I feel like it's kind of going to kick off the bloodbath that is about to happen in the rest of this book, and I'm quite excited about it, honestly. I always really enjoy horror books, so I don't really understand why I don't read them more, but I always just think they're so fun. Even though there are people getting murdered, but like, it's entertaining, you know? So I just feel like I don't read enough horror books. So I feel like I should get on that. But I really like the concept of this horror book specifically because so many people, myself included, are kind of terrified at the thought of open water and what could potentially live under the ocean where we haven't explored yet, because so much of the ocean is unexplored, and sitting and thinking about what could potentially be lying in wait down there could send me into a spiral. But I do really like how it's being used in this book. And I also really like it when they go underwater, because that makes me feel very claustrophobic when they're in their like little, what are the words, vessels, going around in absolute pitch blackness and essentially just waiting for things to come into view. I'm like, that's awful. That's terrifying. I don't like it. And also I really like the killer mermaid concept that's being used. I would really like to know if any of you guys have any like movie recommendations that involve killer mermaids, because I want a visual for this book so bad, because the mermaids have been described a few times and I've tried to look at pictures of them, but I still feel like I can't really get a good image of them because they sound horrifying. Like the way they've been described, I'm like, ew. But I would really love to watch like a horror movie with mermaids. So if that exists and you're aware of it, please let me know because I would really like to watch one. But I'm just having a really good time with this book and I think it's going to continue to be very entertaining. And I would very much like to read a lot of this book today. I don't think I'm gonna finish it today because I'm not insane, but I'll probably finish it up tomorrow. And then I also found out that there's like a prequel novella to this book called Rolling in the Deep, I think. And I'm pretty sure the audiobook of it is currently available for my library, so I'm thinking I'm gonna go ahead and borrow it and I'll probably listen to it throughout the week because it does chronicle the events of like the first ship. So I think that could be really interesting too. It's like 3 hours, so it's not super long or anything. So I'm probably gonna add that onto this TBR as well. Just, you know, adding more books. So that's kind of my update on this. Very excited to read some more of it. But I'm thinking for this first part of the afternoon, I would like to read one of my graphic novels. It's only day 2, but I already feel like I'm falling behind and I need to finish a book. So I'm thinking a graphic novel would be a good choice, and I'm thinking I want to read New Moon Part 1, although I'm a little bit sad because I don't think my library has Part 2, and I might have to buy Part 2 like on Kindle if I want to read it, which I really don't want to do. But I think I'll figure that out later, and for now I'm just gonna read New Moon. That's kind of my plan for the afternoon, and my plan for today is just a bunch of reading. Let me get into this graphic novel and I'll give you an update when I'm done. Okay, so I finished the New Moon graphic novel. Book 1 done for Suburban. I'm quite excited about it. This was, you know, honestly not that bad. I feel like New Moon, I'm starting to hate it less than I used to. I don't even know why. I feel like I'm going through some character development. Kind of weird. That's not to say that I like it, but I think I don't have a vehement hatred towards it anymore, you know? I actually kind of enjoyed my time. My only critique of this graphic novel is the way that it depicted those months where Bella's just like super depressed and they're just kind of like flying by. You know what I'm talking about? Because in the movie, it does that iconic shot where it like circles around her and the window changes. And then in the book, as you're changing pages, it's like October, November, December, like that kind of thing. But in this one, it's just like one page and you can see like the calendars on the floor, which I understand that they wanted to do something different to the movie. Like, I get it. But I feel like it didn't have the same emotional impact. And like, I'm not even kidding, I feel like it didn't. Because even though Bella is depressed over something seemingly ridiculous, she's still depressed. And I feel like that sequence of those months just like blurring by does accurately display what depression can be like. But I feel like it was just better in the movie, honestly. Like, the movie's the best one. But kind of going off that, one thing that I do really like this is how different it is from the movie, because it's a very true adaptation of the book specifically. So it's kind of interesting to see that just get adapted in a different way, because obviously even when I read the book, it's just the movie going on up here the whole time, you know? So having that visual element that like forces me to think about it in a different way, I like. It's fun. So I'm going to go spend the rest of the day hopefully making some progress with Into the Drowning Deep, and then I will see you guys tomorrow morning. 2 days later now. I decided not to vlog anything yesterday because I just kind of wanted to chill. I spent the day finishing up Into the Drowning Deep, which we're going to talk about. I finished a novella, which we'll talk about. And then I also started listening to Middle of the Night, which we're going to talk about all of that in a moment here. But I also decided to do some crocheting yesterday, so I made 6 more granny squares for my blanket, which is very exciting. I think this is my favorite. I like the color combo on this one. I definitely plan to make some more granny squares, maybe later today. I'm not sure, but I want to make some more progress with my blanket. And then also this morning, I decided to do my summerween journaling spread, which I'm quite happy with how that turned out. So on to the plethora of reading updates that I have for you guys. Probably the most important one being that I finished Into the Drowning Deep, and I honestly loved this book so much. However, I do have one issue with it, and it is kind of a big issue because I feel like the ending was really abrupt. I feel like the ending of this book was really fast-paced, and I really enjoyed that. I feel like it was escalating the situation really well, and I feel like the tension was building, and then when we got to the end, it was just like, oh, we did this thing and everything was okay, and I was like, what do you mean you did this thing and everything was okay? I feel like it introduced this like concept, this like big concept at the end of this book. And then I was like, but like now that we know about this, we can defeat it. I was like, what? What? I just feel like it was such a weird ending to the book because I really liked where things were going and like the introduction of this like new thing that they found out. I was like, that's so cool. But I feel like we got to the really cool thing and then it just like stopped. At one point there were only 10 pages in the book left and I was like, how are we gonna wrap things up in 10 pages? I literally have no clue. And I just really did not like how this book ended, and I feel like that is the only thing that is stopping me from giving this book a 5-star because the rest of this book was so good, honestly. This is kind of my first like sci-fi horror kind of thing, I think. Well, no, I feel like I have read some books that are kind of like borderline sci-fi horror. Like I would consider Firestarter by Stephen King to be very like sci-fi horror, and I really liked that one. And I also really liked this one, so I'm kind of thinking I need to read more sci-fi horror because so far I've really enjoyed it, but I just feel like all of these scientific elements that were brought into this book were why I enjoyed it so much. As I mentioned earlier, this is an incredibly well-researched book. There was so much actual information about like marine life and just everything relating to marine biology that I found to be incredibly fascinating. And throughout the book, I took so many pauses to like look things up, look at pictures of things, and like I now know the difference between a giant squid and a colossal squid, and I just feel so knowledgeable right now. And it's all because of this book, and I love books that make me like want to look into other topics further, and this book has definitely done that for me because even though it's about killer mermaids, which clearly don't exist, there were still so many other elements that were discussed in this book that like are real, that were really cool, that I've never really like taken the time to think about. So I liked that a lot. But I also feel like the scientific elements in relation to the mermaid and like the biology of them as sea creatures was so well thought out, and it was so well explained. And I feel like to some people they might find that to be a little bit boring, but I thoroughly enjoyed it because I think it added an element of authenticity that honestly made this book a little bit more scary. There were so many things being discussed that just made so much sense scientifically that you're like, this feels maybe a little too real, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know there have been people that have gone down to the bottom of the Challenger Deep, so I'm just gonna assume that they did not see mermaids or else we would know about it. But the possibility is interesting. I also just really liked the overall style that this book was written in because there are a lot of different points of view that you end up following throughout this book. In part 1, you're kind of introduced to like our main characters, but like throughout the rest of the book, you end up getting points of view from like so many different people on this ship. And eventually the book kind of just like starts bouncing back and forth between these points of view, which I feel like could get confusing, but I think all of the characters feel so distinct that it didn't. And I actually really liked that narrative decision because I feel like it kept me really engaged. I feel like, you know, we were getting something with one person, then it kind of left off on a cliffhanger, and then we switched to this other person where like other really bad things were happening. I just really loved this book. Honestly, I'm so glad that I picked it. I'm holding it. Okay. I'm so glad that I picked it up. Honestly, I'm kind of considering getting a physical copy because I would consider rereading this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So yes, very, very close to a 5-star. If the ending had just been drawn out like a little bit more, it would have been good, but it was still great. And then yesterday, I also listened to the entirety of the prequel novella, which is Rolling in the Deep. And this one was fine. I definitely found it to be very interesting, but the only problem with this is you know exactly where it's going because of what you know from Into the Drowning Deep. Like, you know that all of these people are going to be viciously attacked by these mermaids and die. So every time all the scientists are like, oh, I can't wait to like go home with all my research. I'm like, yeah, good luck with that, buddy. But I would definitely say it was pretty interesting. If you liked Into the Drowning Deep, I'd recommend checking it out. I don't know if I'd recommend reading it first, honestly, but I think reading it after is kind of more interesting. And then the last reading update is that I did start the audiobook for Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I don't remember how far into it I am. I don't like that Audible does not tell me what percentage I am through the audiobook. It bothers me. I think I'm about 40% of the way through the audiobook. And at the current moment, I am really liking it. But at this point in my life, I have learned to not judge a thriller by its first 50% because it can go so far downhill so quickly, and it typically does for me. Because both Home Before Dark and The Only One Left, like, they have such good starts. But then when you start to figure things out, you're like, wait, that's so dumb. And I feel like that's how things are gonna go with this book, because I am really liking the setup of this book so far. But this book is following our main character Ethan, and I do really like the fact that this book is told in kind of two separate timelines. The first one being modern day, where Ethan is 40, he is moving back into his childhood home because his parents are moving to Florida. And the second timeline being 1994, and in the summer of 1994, Ethan and his friend Billy, I think. And one morning after Ethan and Billy had spent the night camping outside in Ethan's backyard, Ethan wakes up, there's a huge slash in the tent, and Ethan is gone. And the police obviously looked into this extensively, but they never figured anything out about this, so this has been kind of gnawing at Ethan for the last 30 years because he can't remember what happened that night. So in the current day timeline, we're kind of following him as he is being confronted by these memories again because he's back in his childhood kind of home. And then we're also being introduced to the other people who were kids at the time that that happened, that were kind of like all living in the cul-de-sac, and we're seeing why they're back, what their role in the situation is. And I just feel like there's a lot of, it's not necessarily suspense, but I feel like there are just a lot of creepy happenings going on in the book so far. There's kind of been a discussion of ghosts, which obviously I'm very much into, but I know that it's not going to lead anywhere because it is a thriller and not like a paranormal kind of situation. So I feel like the explanation for why things feel ghostly is gonna be dumb. But I'm prepared for that. I'm prepared for that to happen. Like, I know it's gonna happen and it's gonna be okay. But I'm really liking it so far. I'm definitely gripped at the moment, and I do really want to, I think, finish the book up today. I do want to work on my puzzle. We'll start it and then listen to my audiobook while I work on that, so that'll be nice, and I'll probably like finish the puzzle and the audiobook today. But honestly, so far this book has instilled a fear in me of like motion sensor lights, because the beginning of this book opens up with Ethan being awake at night because he has really bad insomnia, and he just sees all of his neighbors in the cul-de-sac. They're like motion sensor lights, like going on one after the other, like somebody's walking around. And I'm just thinking that my 2 a.m. brain could never handle that. Like, I would be scared out of my mind, especially if I was home alone. Absolutely not. So no motion sensor lights ever. But then the last thing that I want to say is that there's this little kid whose name is Henry. He's like 10. He is precious and adorable, and if anything happens to him, I will riot. And I feel like it's going to, and I'm a little scared. But anyway, I feel like I've spent way too much time talking. I've had way too many updates to give you guys in this little segment here, so I'm sorry that this is so long, but I just did so much reading yesterday and I needed to catch you guys up. So I'm gonna stop talking. I'm going to, what am I gonna do? I'm thinking this morning, I'm gonna pick up one of my other books. I'm not sure which one yet, but we'll just kind of see. So I'm going to get into doing that, and I will chat to you guys later. Okay, so it is the next day. We're currently on day 5 of Summerween, and I'm 4 books down because I finished Middle of the Night yesterday, and I don't know how to feel about it. Like, I kind of really liked it, but I kind of really didn't. I must say though, I did really enjoy my audiobook listening experience because I did start and finish my Halloween puzzle yesterday, which was so fun. I just had such a nice time yesterday afternoon. I think I sat down for like 5 hours straight and finished that puzzle in its entirety, and it's actually one of my new favorite Halloween puzzles. I just think it's so cute, and I'm absolutely going to be keeping it and doing it again at some point in time. So that was a big win. But as for Middle of the Night, I think I've just yet to pinpoint whether or not I actually like the fact that Riley Sager uses so many paranormal plot points in his thrillers. I feel like I always really enjoy them up until the point where you actually figure out what's going on, because obviously, since it's a thriller, it's not actually going to be paranormal, and there is going to be some real world explanation behind these like ghostly things, but I just never feel satisfied with the actual reason behind all of these ghostly happenings. But this one I would definitely say I enjoyed more than some of the other explanations that have been in his previous books. This one made a lot of sense. I didn't see it coming, but I still enjoyed it. But I would honestly love to see Riley Sager actually write like a paranormal horror type of book, because I think he really knows how to build suspense. I always feel like his books are very eerie, like borderline kind of creepy, but I always feel like he just pulls back at the last second. He's like, this is like what's actually happening. And I'm like, I don't want to know what's actually happening. But overall with this thriller, there definitely were a couple of plot twists towards the end that I absolutely did not see coming. There was one, like kind of the first reveal that you get. I had to take a second. I had to pause the audiobook and stare at the wall for a minute because it was quite the reveal that I did not see it coming whatsoever, and I really liked that one. But the others were just kind of okay. There was one that I definitely saw coming. There was one that I definitely had suspicions about, but I feel like there were kind of 3 reveals towards the end of this book, which I do like how many plot twists he has going on at the end, because I thought that was fun. I feel like it is always very engaging when you get to the end of his thrillers, because it's just like one and then the other and then the other, and I do like that. But some of them were a little bit lackluster for me, and I didn't 100% love how things ended up. But that's kind of how I feel about every thriller, so I don't really know if that's this book's fault in particular. I'm not a huge thriller reader, however I do like picking one up every now and then. But one thing I did absolutely adore about this thriller was the epilogue. I thought this was just such a cute way to end the book, which I feel like is a weird thing to say about a thriller, but I just really like how everything ended up. But overall, I would definitely say this was a fun read. I really liked it. I would definitely rank this like higher among Riley Sager's thrillers for myself. I think I've read like 4 of them maybe, and this would be like number 2. I feel like this is the thriller of his that has creeped me out the most, which I feel like is a weird thing to say because Home Before Dark, which is my favorite one from him, literally takes place in like a haunted mansion. But this one, for some reason, in parts, like the hair on the back of my neck was just like standing up, and I was so creeped out. And I don't know if that's because this takes place in the suburbs, and like I have lived in the suburbs my whole life, so it's like maybe a little too real, you know what I'm saying? But overall, I'm just really happy that I decided to pick this one up, and I feel like listening to it on audio was the way to go. I feel like you will never see me physically reading a thriller because I hate physically reading thrillers, but if I have somebody like tell it to me, I always feel like I get more into the stories, so that is my preferred way to consume thrillers, and I just really liked my experience with it. So very, very content with this pick. But that means I'm now 4 books down for Summerween. I'm still aiming for my 7 books in 7 days thing, and I feel like I'll be able to do it because I am on track so far. I did start another book yesterday, but I'm kind of back and forth on whether or not I want to continue it, because I did pick up The Clackety by Laura Senf yesterday. I've been still trying to figure out what book I want to use for the like read a thriller or a horror book prompt, because it's so broad. It could just be anything. And I don't know what I want to pick up for it. So I was like, maybe I'll try this one. I don't know. It's like a middle grade horror kind of situation. And it's kind of fun. I just don't know if I'm really into the story yet. I'm on page like 61, so I'm decently far into it to like be able to tell whether or not I like it. I just don't know if I am liking it or not. I'm gonna put this one on hold for a little bit. I think today I'd like to focus on finishing my other graphic novel, which is A Guest in the House, and this is what I would like to read this morning. And then when I'm finished, I'll come back and we will talk about options for what I could read next. So it is the next morning and I'm here with a couple of updates for you guys. The first and most important one being that I thrifted this like cardigan sweater thing yesterday. I got it for $2.50 and I kind of love it. I think the color is so cute. Obviously it's perfect for fall, so I had to wear it today. But aside from my amazing thrift find, I do want to talk about a couple of things that I've done. The first one being that I did finish A Guest in the House by Emily Carroll. And this was an interesting read. Going into this graphic novel, I definitely expected it to be a little bit trippy because I have flipped through it, obviously, because I can't stop myself from flipping through a graphic novel before I read it. And while most of the pages are black and white, it does sometimes flip to just like full color illustrations. And the art style is absolutely gorgeous, but they're weird as hell, like in the best possible way. You know? But basically, this story is very heavily inspired by Rebecca because you're following our main character, who is a very, like, nondescript main character. She does have a name, unlike the main character in Rebecca, but she's a very kind of bland main character. She doesn't really seem to have much of a personality, which isn't a complaint because I do think that's kind of the point of this graphic novel. But she just recently got married to this guy and she's moving in with him and his daughter, and the whole time she's trying to move in and get settled, she learns more and more about his recently deceased wife, and our main character starts to feel very inferior to his last wife. Even his daughter is like, I want my mom, who the hell are you? And our main character just feels very haunted by the idea of this guy's last wife being so much better than her, but it kind of turns into her being maybe actually haunted by the ghost of his dead wife. And our main character is trying to figure out if this is actually happening or if it's just going on in her head, which is a very, I think, like a trademark gothic trope, which I always do very much enjoy. So I definitely really liked the overall setup of this book, and there's a twist towards the end, which I did not see coming at all, and I'm still very confused by it, but in a good way, I think. But I just thought this was a really interesting take on the story, and I also really enjoyed our main character kind of grappling with the fact that she doesn't really know who she is. She doesn't know how she fits into this house. I think she's also kind of grappling with her sexuality. It wasn't like explicitly put out there, but I think there are definitely like some tones of that in this book as well. And I thought that all fit really well with the overall plot of this graphic novel. And also Emily Carroll's art style is absolutely stunning. Like, I cannot knock it at all. 5 stars for the art because I do love it. Like, look at, this is like the first page, but like look at this Look at the colors, it's so beautiful. And then yesterday I finally decided on the book that I was going to start for the read a thriller or a horror prompt, because me and Elaine were supposed to buddy read this book last month and I did not. Because I'm awful, so I decided it was finally time that I actually pick it up and read it. So I started the Final Girl support group by Grady Hendrix. I think I'm like 60% of the way through this book maybe, and I don't like it. I've read 2 other books by Grady Hendrix before. I read The Southern Book Club's Guide to oh my god, that title's so long. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires and My Best Friend's Exorcism. I think I gave both of them either really high 3 stars or 4 stars. Like, they were pretty entertaining. I liked them. With this one, I know I want to keep reading because I want to see where everything ends up with this story, but I don't really think I like it. I think it's a little bit too campy almost for me. And conceptually, I feel like campy stories I would enjoy. I feel like his other 2 books were really campy, so I was like, maybe, like, I don't know why it would bother me in this one necessarily. But there are just like some really ridiculous things going on, like a little bit. But basically this book is following our main character, who is a final girl, and there's like a legitimate final girl support group full of a bunch of other final girls. The one thing that I really do like about this book is the fact that all of the final girls in the group are based off of like actual slasher franchises, which I think is cool. And for the most part, I think I've seen at least the first movies in all of the franchises that are represented in here. I think the only one I haven't seen is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I am never watching. I just feel like I'm not the target audience for that movie, so it's a no. But the rest of them I have seen and enjoyed, but that's kind of where the positives stop, honestly, and that is a very small part of this story, because we're following our main character Lynette, who is a final girl who is a part of this support group, and she is an interesting main character. I don't want to say she's annoying, because the way she's acting checks out. Like, she's been through an incredibly traumatic experience, so I'm like, I understand why you act the way you act. But she's just too much sometimes, and it is a little bit over the top. Like, legitimately, her best friend is a potted plant. For example, there's this scene where she is at her apartment and her friend Julia comes over, and through some turns of events, Julia ends up getting shot through the window. And Lynette, like the incredibly paranoid person she is, she's like, oh damn, I don't want to get shot, I'm gonna leave. So as she's leaving, she's like kind of feeling bad about it. She's like, oh, I can't believe I left my best friend there. And Julia, like, she was talking about her damn potted plant. And conceptually, it's really funny, but it's also just incredibly stupid, and I didn't like it. But the overall plot of this book is the fact that there is somebody that is going through and like killing all of the final girls, and Lynette's trying to make sure that does not happen. So I feel like overall, even though that sounds like it should be very interesting, it's really not. Like, I find myself to be very bored while reading this book. I did just end up borrowing the audiobook from the library, and I've been listening to it while I've been doing some crocheting, which, side note, I have added another row onto my blanket, which is very exciting. Here's how it's looking. Maybe I'll hold it this way and you can see it. Perfect. So that was nice, but I don't really like this book. But I'm definitely gonna finish it. I think I only have like 2 hours left of the audiobook, so obviously I'm not gonna stop now. Another thing though that I do really like is the fact that it's kind of mixed media a little bit. Like, it does for the most part follow like a normal narrative, storytelling, whatever, but it does have like these things throughout it every now and then, which I do think are fun. So that is a point in this book's favor. I just wish I was liking it a little bit more. It is what it is. Anyway, it is the second to last day of Summerween, which is quite disappointing. However, I feel like I'm making really good progress with my TBR. Definitely gonna be finishing up the Final Girl support group soon, probably like early afternoon, and that'll be 6 books down for Summerween, and I will be on track to hit my 7 books in 7 days, because later I'm gonna read The Castle of Otranto. I'm going to read this tonight, obviously, when the sun goes down, so I can hit that last prompt. And then tomorrow, I don't even know what I'm gonna do tomorrow. It'll be the last day of Summerween, and I'll have finished my TBR. I mean, I know I do still have like this nonfiction book. I did start Trick or Treat briefly the other night. I think I made it like 16 pages in. It's been interesting. I just didn't really feel like I had enough to talk about with it yet. But maybe I'll spend some time tomorrow kind of reading that. So that sounds nice. Like a chill way to end off the readathon. So there we go. You've been caught up with all of my plans. I'm going to maybe go do some Halloween shopping a little bit later. That does sound fun. I know I have done a little bit already, but like, who's gonna stop me from doing more? Nobody. So I will talk to you guys later, maybe tomorrow morning when I have an update for you. Hello, so it is a little bit later, well, a lot of bit later in the day, and I'm here to do my obligatory candle lit update, which is very exciting, very spooky. Books. Let's talk about books first. I did just start The Castle of Otranto, and I've made it to page 37, but the book does start on page 17, so it's not as impressive as it sounds. But this one has been interesting so far. I knew kind of the catalyst for the events of this book because Will talks about it in the Infernal Devices, and that is literally the only place that I've really seen somebody talk about this book is in a different book. But this book is set at the Castle of Otranto, and we're kind of following the family that currently lives there. And the beginning of this book shows the son who is about to be married, but literally on his way to the chapel, a giant helmet falls out of the sky and crushes him and kills him. And I think the book is going to just continue to be odd and strange, which I'm honestly kind of into. Like, I really like the atmosphere of this book already, and I feel like it's only gonna get better as the book progresses because they've already talked about how the castle is haunted, there are secret passageways, they're talking about like goblins and whatever, and I think that's really fun. I feel like this is gonna be a very interesting read. I think I am going to stop here for tonight though because I'm a little bit tired. And 18th century literature and me being tired certainly do not mix. So I'm probably going to finish this up tomorrow night, which sounds kind of nice. So that is kind of how the Castle of Otranto is going so far, but I'm enjoying it so far. But I do have a couple of fun, spooky things that I would like to show you that I have acquired today as well, because Home Goods has put out some of their Halloween stuff, and I obviously had to take a little bit of a look. And I found this mug that I've really been wanting because I think they've had this the last few years, but I've never picked it up. But look how cute it is. It's got like little ghosts on it. It's like ceramic and really cute and whatnot. So I'm quite excited about this find because I love this mug. And I'll probably have to have some more hot chocolate tomorrow so I can put my mug to use while Summerween is still going on. So solid purchase. And then I got something fun in the mail because very fun news. I don't know if they're out already or when exactly they're coming out, but Cass has designed some bookmarks, which I'm so excited about. If you guys don't know, Cass has an Etsy shop, she has a website, I'll link it down below, you should definitely go check it out, because she is coming out with sword bookmarks, and they're so freaking cool. And obviously she sent me some, you guys have already seen one of them because I'm using it as the bookmark for the Castle of Otranto. It's so cool. She's coming out with like a summer collection and a fall collection, but they're all coming out in July, so let me show them to you. So we have the two summer ones. We have like a little blueberry sword and a little strawberry sword, and these are so cute. And then obviously my personal favorites are the fall spooky themed ones. So we have like this little pumpkin sword, which is so adorable. And then we also have the one that I have in my book, which is my personal favorite, which is the bat one. Like, look at this. It's so fun. She's been putting so much work into these this week because she cut these all by hand, which was honestly kind of crazy of her. But I feel like all the work was definitely worth it because these are so freaking cute. And I'm so grateful that she sent me some of them. So if you want to check them out, I'll have them linked down below. But I wanted to talk about them because I'm obsessed. That's kind of everything that I had for you in this update. But I wanted an opportunity to do a little bit of a candlelit, spooky update kind of thing. So there we go. I'm about to go to sleep because it is almost midnight and I am rather tired, although it is raining and storming right now. So I'm about to sleep so good tonight. And I will see you guys tomorrow for the last day of Summerween, which I am quite sad about, but I do have some fun plans tomorrow, so I cannot wait for those. Made it to the end of Summerween. Yesterday was the last day of the readathon, and I decided to spend it just doing a little bit of reading. Then I watched a movie last night, and then I did a little bit more reading. So we have a couple of things to talk about before I can fully wrap up this video. The first thing being that I did read a little bit more of Trick or Treat: A History of Halloween. I knew I wasn't going to finish this book in this video. I definitely don't want to try and rush through a nonfiction book because I feel like that kind of defeats the point of reading it, because obviously I want to learn things. So I'm like, I don't want to like try and consume all of this in a day and forget all of it. But I did make it up to part 2, and I've really been enjoying what I'm reading so far. So much so that I decided to buy a copy of it for myself. I feel like this is definitely the kind of book that I would like to have in my collection. I'd like to be able to reference it. I'd like to be able to put some tabs in it just for information that I find to be particularly interesting. And I've been wanting to buy a copy of this for a really long time, but I've always wanted the hardcover, but the hardcovers are out of print and they're always like stupid expensive online. So I did some looking and I found an ex-library copy that seems to be in pretty good condition. So I decided to go ahead and buy that one. So I will have a copy for myself. And I just found the first part of this book to be really interesting. It focuses on like common misconceptions around the origins of Halloween, and it focuses on where it actually came from. I feel like this is really putting all the knowledge that I learned back in AP European history to the test, because there's so much that is applicable that goes into the origins of Halloween, which I found to be very interesting. So I really liked what I read of this. I think I got to page like 30, so not a ton of progress, but I liked it and I want to read some more of it for sure. Then yesterday I actually decided to kind of go off TBR a bit because I did not finish The Castle of Otranto. I finished my movie at like 10 o'clock last night, and the thought of reading the rest of this book was not, I was not into that concept. So I decided to kind of ditch this one off the TBR for the time being because I got a book in the mail yesterday and I decided to read that one instead. Because I got Welcome to Dead House, which is the very first Goosebumps book in the mail. I've been looking for a copy of this, but because it's the first one, it is like a little bit harder to find in like half-price book stores where I've been buying Goosebumps books. So I got this one on eBay and I got it in the mail yesterday and I was like, I need just like a slightly spooky book to read in the dark. So I decided to pick this one up and read it, and I really liked this one. It was a lot of fun. It follows this family that inherits a house from a great uncle that they never even knew existed. I'm like, first of all, maybe look into that a little bit more before you decide to just like take this house, but okay. So they're moving into this town called Dark Falls, and I'm like, second of all, don't move into a town with such a spooky name and not expect spooky happenings. You know what I'm saying? I feel like these people are kind of stupid. But it's following them as they are meeting some of the new kids that live in this town, and they're all just like a little bit weird. Their house also appears to be haunted potentially. Like, what's that about? So I just thought this was so much fun, and it has reinvigorated my interest in reading more Goosebumps books because these are the perfect, like, kind of nostalgic, spooky kind of reads. So I'd like to read more of them because this was, I don't want to call it delightful. I'd say it was very spooky. And it was kind of perfect for Summerween because this book does take place in the middle of July. I'm like, it's the middle of July right now. So that was kind of perfect, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So this was my 7th book for the readathon. I did finish 7 books in 7 days, which I am quite excited about. That was honestly my only goal for this readathon, was to read 7 books, and here we are. So was a success, I'd say. I also hit all the prompts, which is also quite fun. So there's that. And then finally yesterday, I did decide to do like a little spooky movie night situation, which was really fun. I decided to watch Sleepaway Camp because literally all I knew about it was the fact that it was like a slasher movie that took place at a sleepaway camp. And I was like, oh, that sounds perfect, because the only like subgenre of horror movies that I really enjoy are slasher movies. And I was like, that sounds perfect for Summerween. And it was an experience. Like, going into it knowing nothing, I'll just say it was an experience. But now that I've caught you guys up on all of the things that I did yesterday, it is time to get a wrap up on all of the books that I read this week, because I read 7. So I think I'm gonna do these in order of like how much I liked them. So I'm gonna start with the one that I liked the least, which I do have a lot of thoughts on. And then I'll make my way up to the one that I like the most, which I feel like maybe you can probably guess what it is. But the book that I definitely liked the least out of all of the books that I read this week was The Final Girl Support Group. I did finish this book up. I haven't given you guys my final thoughts on it yet because I wanted to think on it a little bit more. And I've thought on it a little bit more, and I have things to say. I feel like conceptually, this book is a winner. Like, it's got such a solid concept to it, and I felt like going into this book, I was really gonna like it, but just in execution, it's not great. I just feel like the plot was messy, and especially as we got into the second half of the book, I was like, what are we even doing anymore? And there were so many things that the characters were doing that didn't even make any sense. Like, there's this whole situation with one of the final girl's wives that I just thought was despicable, frankly. It was terrible. I was like, literally, what are you doing? It made me so upset. And I also feel like I didn't really like the characters. Like, they didn't really do anything for me. In fact, I kind of disliked a lot of the characters in this book, especially our main character, which I have talked about. Because here's the thing, while I appreciate the fact that her immense paranoia is a way that PTSD can manifest for people, especially if they've gone through something as traumatizing as what our main character has gone through. But I just feel like the way it was actually portrayed was very over the top and just so repetitive that at some point I was like, stop talking. I also feel like while this book does have a lot of conversations in it that could potentially be really interesting, I feel like it just didn't go far enough with any of them, honestly. Like, I talked about kind of the mixed media elements that are in here, and a lot of them are actually really thought-provoking, and I feel like had it gone a little bit more in depth with them, it could have been a really good discussion to add into the book, but literally all you get is like the 1 page of this, and it doesn't really do anything with it in the story. For example, there's this essay that is like put into this book, and it talks about the excessive violence against women in horror, specifically slasher movies, and why we as a society like to watch those things. And I'm like, that's such an interesting topic that could have been so relevant in this book, but I just feel like it didn't really do anything with it. And I feel the same way about the discussion that was kind of brought into this book about the public's fascination and kind of fanatical behavior surrounding the actual real-life monsters that these final girls have had to face. And I feel like it's very applicable into like actual real-world things with the way that some people interact with true crime content, but again, it just like didn't do anything with it. I'm like, these topics are so thematically appropriate for this book, but like it doesn't go anywhere with it. It's just like very surface level, and I'm like, you were almost there. I just have a lot of thoughts on this book. A lot of not great thoughts, honestly. I just did not like this book, and it would probably be like a 2-star read if I was going to rate it maybe lower? I don't know. See, this is why I don't rate things. I don't even have to think about what I would give it. All I know is that I don't like it. So yeah, that was basically a really long-winded way to say that this is my least favorite one of the week. But the other 6 books that I want to rank are really good, and they're not books that I would consider to be like bad, because even though they're ranked, I think the rest of them are solid reads and I would recommend. So coming in at number 6, we have A Guest in the House by Emily Carroll. Again, this one was just a very interesting read, but thought-provoking, and I liked it. Then we have the New Moon graphic novel. Obviously this one was so much fun, and listening to the New Moon soundtrack while I was reading it, solid reading experience. Then we have Rolling in the Deep, which is the prequel novella type thing to Into the Drowning Deep. I really like this one. I thought it was really interesting to kind of get that background that you don't get in Into the Drowning Deep, and if you liked Into the Drowning Deep, I would recommend you give this one a listen or a read. Then at number 3, I'm going to put Welcome to Dead House. Again, this was like the perfect Summerween pick, and I just had a really fun time with it. Then in spot number 2, I have Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. This is honestly like one of my new favorite Riley Sager books. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I thought it was a really interesting read, and I was kind of hooked the whole time, and it has definitely made me want to read the rest of Riley Sager's backlist. I know that some of them aren't great, but there are definitely a couple that I would like to read soon. And then my favorite book of the week is absolutely Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. I am so close to giving this book a 5-star. Like, I might actually just give it a 5-star. You know, this was just such a interesting, well thought out and researched sci-fi horror book, and it just was not what I was expecting in the slightest, but I was so pleasantly surprised by it. It was just so good, and I'm so glad that I finally got around to reading this, because it's been on my radar for a really long time, and I'm really glad that I ended up loving it. Even though I didn't love the ending, I feel like I can kind of get over that. And then the other 2 books that I started and didn't finish, these 2. Oh, I also started The Clackety, which I already like put back on my shelves because I'm not gonna read it right now. I'll probably get back to it later, but like, I just wasn't feeling it right now. But minus that one, here are all of the books that I like finished or started this week. But anyway, this outro is absolutely way too long, so I'm gonna stop talking now. Obviously, thank you so much to Gabby Reads for putting on such an amazing readathon. The amount of work that she puts into this is astounding, honestly, and I am impressed, but so happy that she does it. This readathon is just my favorite thing to do in the middle of summer, and I've just had such an amazing time this week. It's also been so fun because so many people have been daily vlogging. Those brave souls. I could never. But those have also been so much fun to watch, and I feel like they've just kept me in the Summerween spirit. So I just absolutely loved Summerween 2024. It was amazing. So I really hope you guys also enjoyed this video. I know Halloween content in the middle of the summer isn't what everybody wants, but it's what I want, and it's what I need, so I hope you guys still enjoyed. I would love to know down below if any of you also participated in Summerween, and I would love to know, what books did you read, or what did you do? Also, before we go, I would like to thank everybody over on my Patreon. If you're ever looking for more content from me, that is always linked down below. But with that, I am going to let you guys go because this video is insanely long at this point. I think this might be the vlog that I've had the most amount of footage for ever. There's a lot of it. Thank you so much again for watching. I hope you're all having an amazing spooky Monday, if that is the day that you're watching this. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.